8 hours. That's how long some fans waited in their cars in the cold just to get a burger. Not a limited edition sneaker drop. Not a concert ticket. A double-double animal style at a drive-thru in Meridian, Idaho, where hundreds of people camped out overnight and the line snaked past a shopping mall before the doors even opened. Some brought blankets. Some brought camping chairs. By the time the sun came up, the whiteboard out front read 7 to 8 hours, and almost nobody left. This is what happens when a company built to stay small suddenly decides it wants to be everywhere. For 75 years, In-N-Out did the opposite of what every fast food giant does. McDonald's franchised, handing off thousands of locations to independent operators chasing their own bottom line. In-N-Out never franchised a single store. McDonald's froze its patties, building a supply chain that could stretch across 100 countries without anyone noticing the difference. In-N-Out refused, insisting on fresh, never frozen beef, delivered from company-owned distribution centers within a short drive of every single restaurant. McDonald's chased scale first and worried about quality later. In-N-Out built a religion around doing the opposite, and for decades it worked beautifully. But now, as the company pushes east for the first time in its history, that same philosophy is colliding head-on with the one thing it was never designed for: growth on someone else's timeline. The company was founded in 1948 by Harry and Esther Snyder in Baldwin Park, California, running what's often called America's first drive-thru hamburger stand, complete with a two-way speaker box so customers never had to leave their cars. From the very beginning, there was a promise: never freeze anything, never cut corners, never let a franchisee dilute the recipe. For generations, that promise came with a built-in ceiling. No franchising meant every location had to be company-owned, company-trained, and company-supplied, down to the produce. No frozen ingredients meant every restaurant had to sit close enough to a warehouse to get fresh beef delivered daily. It kept In-N-Out small on purpose, almost stubbornly so. Even now, after decades of careful, incremental expansion, the chain operates in only a handful of states, with roughly 2/3 of its restaurants still packed into California alone. That was the deal fans signed up for. In-N-Out wasn't trying to be McDonald's. It was trying to be the anti-McDonald's, a chain so devoted to consistency that it deliberately capped its own ambition rather than risk what made it special. But somewhere along the way, the outside world stopped letting In-N-Out stay that way. The pressure started at home. In April 2024, California passed a law raising the minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 an hour, one of the highest mandated wages for the industry anywhere in the country. In-N-Out, a company that had spent decades marketing itself on keeping prices low and treating its employees well, had no real choice but to raise menu prices almost immediately. Leadership said publicly it had fought to keep costs down for customers, and that the increase was needed both to fund employee raises and to protect quality standards. But the math didn't leave much room to maneuver. Economists who studied the law's aftermath found real trade-offs underneath the headlines. Fast food employment in California dipped even as menu prices climbed, and a later study out of UC Santa Cruz linked the wage hike directly to higher prices and thinner scheduled hours for workers. California's governor's office pushed back hard on that research, calling it thin and unscientific, insisting higher wages were strengthening the state's economy rather than hollowing it out. Politicians on both sides picked the story apart for their own reasons. But underneath all the noise, the numbers on the menu board told their own simple story. The cheap, reliable burger that built In-N-Out's identity was getting less cheap in the one state the company had always called home. So leadership started looking elsewhere. CEO Lindsay Snyder, granddaughter of the founders, began speaking openly about the frustrations of running a business in California, from pandemic-era restrictions that once forced 2 of her restaurants to shut down over vaccine check rules, to the rising cost of simply keeping the lights on. She announced she'd be relocating her own family out of state to Tennessee, where In-N-Out was building a second regional headquarters in Franklin, just outside Nashville. For a company that had never operated anywhere but the West, that was a seismic shift. This wasn't a satellite office tucked away for logistics. This was the family at the center of the company beginning to plant roots somewhere else entirely, for the first time in 75 years. And the map kept growing outward from there. New restaurants opened across Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, and Washington, chasing population growth in exactly the states people were moving to as California became more and more expensive to call home. Fans in Florida began publicly begging for a location of their own. Snyder said no. Fans in North Carolina asked, still no. The company's answer stayed consistent, almost stubborn, no matter how loud the request got. No East Coast, just not anytime soon. Maybe not in her lifetime. The reasoning traced straight back to the founding philosophy that built the brand in the first place. Fresh beef needs a distribution center within roughly 300 miles of every store it supplies, and building that kind of supply chain across an entire continent takes years of quiet infrastructure work, not a viral announcement. That's the tension sitting at the center of this whole story. In-N-Out wants the growth. The fans are demanding it, practically begging for it on social media every single time a new state gets teased or a location map quietly updates overnight. But the entire business was engineered around staying compact, and you cannot bolt rapid national expansion onto a company that still refuses to franchise, still refuses to freeze its beef, and still insists on training every single employee the exact same way no matter how far from Baldwin Park that employee happens to be standing. The cracks are already showing. When a new In-N-Out opens in a market that's never had one, the response isn't excitement, it's chaos. In Meridian, Idaho, the wait for the drive-thru stretched up to 8 hours on opening day. Cars lined a nearby outlet mall parking lot long before sunrise, in near freezing temperatures, with entire families treating it like a campout instead of a lunch run. The company flew in roughly 130 of its most experienced employees, pulled from stores hundreds of miles away, just to keep the new location from completely buckling under the crowd. That's not a business scaling smoothly into a new market. That's a business straining under the weight of its own popularity. In Palm Springs, an entirely different kind of friction slowed things down, as local officials pushed back on a planned location's design, arguing it clashed with the city's mid-century modern character. And it isn't just the grand openings causing headaches. Longtime customers, the ones who built In-N-Out's reputation one word-of-mouth recommendation at a time, have started noticing smaller cracks too. Reviews increasingly mention drive-thru lines stretching close to an hour during ordinary dinner rush at established locations, not just brand new ones. Some describe staff who seem undertrained, thrown onto the line the same day they were hired. Others mention fries that come out slightly off, burgers assembled a little unevenly. None of it, on its own, is a 5-alarm scandal. It's something quieter, and in some ways more dangerous for a brand built on consistency. The slow, almost invisible erosion of the exact thing that made people willing to wait in line in the first place. Here's the irony underneath all of it. In-N-Out never wanted to be McDonald's. It built its entire identity by refusing to play that game, refusing to franchise out control, refusing to compromise on ingredients for the sake of speed or square footage. But wanting national relevance, wanting to be the burger people talk about from coast to coast instead of just on the West Coast, means inheriting some of McDonald's oldest problems anyway. Long lines. Inconsistent execution, as the map stretches thinner and thinner. Price hikes that alienate the loyal base that made you famous in the first place. You cannot chase the reach of a global franchise while keeping the intimacy of a family-run 70-store operation from 1955. Eventually, something has to give. Right now, In-N-Out is trying to have both at once. Company-owned, no exceptions, slow, deliberate expansion, state by state, distribution center by distribution center, a hard refusal to cross into the East Coast until the supply chain can actually support it without cutting a single corner. On paper, that discipline is exactly what separates In-N-Out from every other fast food chain that scaled too fast and lost the thing that made it special in the process. Chains that franchised aggressively often ended up trading quality for square footage, diluting the very product that built their reputation, one distant, disconnected operator at a time. But discipline has a cost too. Every year the company holds the line on the East Coast, another generation of fans grows up watching viral videos of a burger they may never get to taste. Every price increase in California chips away, dollar by dollar, at the cheap and reliable reputation that built the brand over 7 decades. And every 8-hour opening day line is a reminder that even the most carefully run company on earth can be overwhelmed by its own popularity the second it steps outside the tight, controlled bubble it was originally built for. In-N-Out isn't McDonald's, and it was never trying to be. But the world keeps asking it to grow like one anyway. And the harsh reality setting in, quietly, store by store, state by state, is that you cannot have McDonald's reach with a 75-year-old mom-and-pop playbook. Something is going to have to bend. The only question left is whether it's the map, the menu, or the very idea of what made people willing to wait in line for a burger in the first place.